Before I start, I just wanted to go through, and we're not going to do introductions today, but I just want to take everybody through the structure a little bit about what this work group is. So we do get together, and I try to do it bi-weekly, except for the big break we've had for the new year. Like I said, this is the first one. And really our goal is to get anything out of the way that gets in between digital service delivery accomplishments. And what we come away with is really helping all the organizations get better digital services out to their customers. We share work whenever we can, and this recording from the presentation, that'll go on our Google Drive. There's a lot of other like prior decks or even update sets or instructional videos. They'll all be on that same drive. I also have a shared instance. When I send the newsletter out, you'll be able to request access to that shared instance. I just let everybody come in as admin. Part of the demo that I'm going to do today is on that shared instance. Like I said, today we have a lot of people, I think, that'll be coming in and out, and we usually go through and introduce the new people. But if you can just drop in the chat, if it's your first time, just tell us your name and then where you're coming from and that it's your first time, just so I could see that in the chat. Okay. So with that, I wanted to show one more thing. We've been meeting since 2018, and right now we have about 430 members. This is a snapshot from last year, the end of last year, where our group membership ended up. And you can see our distribution. We started out in all higher education, but we still have about 40% of our members are from the higher education. We're starting to get more diversified as we opened it up to some of the other industries. And we have some plans, which I'll share later on, that hopefully will diversify this even more. At first, I was a little concerned that as we get away from public sector, people are going to start dropping off. But I think some of the perspectives that have come in as of late from financial services and healthcare, I think have really helped broaden everybody's capabilities. And I'm getting more good feedback than I am bad feedback about broadening the group. So we will talk a little bit more about that, like I said, towards the end of the presentation. So I'm going to jump right into the agenda today. I want to talk about, there's this dichotomy that I keep running into of services, providing services to other people that are going to provide services. And I'm just calling it service as a service or services as a service. And what I want to do is I want to take you through some use cases today, and we're going to go through a deck and sort of a group of code that I've been contributing to as a member of the digital service work group, not as a ServiceNow employee. It's more of a work group contribution. And I'll show you the next rev of that and where I am with it and explain a little bit about what it does. And then at the end, I'm going to flash back a little bit and we'll talk about some of the changes this year. Okay, one of the things that I'm going to do today is I'm going to go into, we talk a lot in service delivery. You know, one of the core pieces of service delivery for ServiceNow is the common service data model. At the end of last year, we talked about 4.0 coming out, and there's a lot of consideration now in the SDLC domain. This is a new domain in 4.0, and this is some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, is how do I conceptualize a service from the time it's an idea, and then how do I go about acquiring that service? What's the whole path to acquiring that service? And today we're going to talk about a CSM use case that I've been seeing a lot, especially in state government, but it's also applicable to anybody where there's a central IT organization providing services to other organizations. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that on the platform. Right, so I want to introduce you to a little project that I've been working on. And it's called I named it the public service template. And what the public service template is a group of code that I put together in a custom application. And we're using it today. We use the version 1 of this in Santa Monica. And really what it is to take all the complexities or a lot of the complexities away from service delivery. So in the beginning, what we did is we had a standard portal and we're able to go ahead and request items on that standard portal. And it would automatically build a lot of things for us. Like in public sector, we always needed a map right? So we standardized the building of a map in a catalog item, and we standardized how do we let people submit a form without logging in, right? The anonymous experience. So a lot of that we templatized. Then what we did is we templatized the common service data model. I don't want to say, go ahead and deploy a catalog item, a new service to your citizens or to your students or your patients or whoever it may be. And then you have to come back and do all this work of configuration. You have to build the common service data model. So what we did is we took a lot of that work and we templatized it. So as you deploy things in the catalog, we created a workflow that would automatically build the common service data model components. And so as you went in and you said, okay, I have this catalog, I'm going to drop a new category in the catalog. What we did is we said, as you build this catalog, we're automatically going to say, let's build the common service data model next to it. And so whatever you build in the catalog taxonomy, we're copying it to the service taxonomy. So in other words, you don't have to come back and build your CMDB as an afterthought. You let the workflow do it for you. So if we're taking, for example, like I have one here, we have a services node, taxonomy node in a portfolio, a service portfolio. We're saying non-emergency issues. So you can kind of trace it through here. And this is what the public service template does for you. It basically automates all these steps. And what you'll end up with is more of a, a copy in two places, right? One's to run your business and your service portfolio and to give it to business owners so that they can see how their services are performing. And then the other side is for the customer so that they can go into your portfolio and request certain services. What we also did is we shortened the process of creating a form. So this is the typical step to create a form. You're going to go to record producers, you're going to click new, you're going to fill it out, and all these steps. Right? And what we did is instead of having to do a lot of these things, we took it and we shortened it. So the template, again, a workflow in the background of the template, because you're dropping this code into the public service catalog, we automated a lot of those things that are just repetitive. So what you'll see is we went from creating a form here to creating a form here. So as you can see, the whole process of thinking about when you're going to build a new form and let it go out to the public to when it hits, we're taking that whole value chain and just chopping it up as much as we can. We're just taking the complexity out of that. So we took the complexity of building your CMDB components. We took the complexity here of certain steps in a form that would be repetitive. And then we also took some variable sets. So we know when we log in, we have variable sets and we want to let people use those variable sets. One of those is a public map. So if there's ever a location that you need to describe, which is a lot of the cases when you're doing public services, where are you? It's either your address or it's the location of something that's going wrong. But where are you is a big thing. So what we did is we templatized that. And then those two variable sets, we also did a variable set for common variables, like keeping your lat and long on a location, letting you put in your name, address, and email address. I can't tell you how painful it was to see everybody start another form when they're doing 60 or 70 forms, right? 60 or 70 services that they're offering in some of these citizen service portals. And every one would start out with name, address, and phone number. So what we did is we just took that and standardized that set so that you don't have to do that part. You already start without it. That's kind of a repeat from last year. I had a couple hundred hours into all that work. I'll show you where it is. But today we want to automate the process of a case. Actually, this is what we do when a case comes in. I'm skipping ahead a little bit. So when the case gets created, because of the service structure, we know who to contact. We know how to build the location because you're going to mark that on a map, and I'll show you that. And we know who is supposed to handle this case. All that comes because we have the catalog side, but we also have the service structure side. Okay, now today, this is the new code. So it's a culmination of automated steps that will bring together in this case. So today what we want to do is we want to look at, there's a new case for a citizen that comes in. And we want to templatize that process from the point where I have an idea for that case all the way through fulfillment. And we want to see how much of that we can really squish down. A lot of the organizations that I've been talking to, most of these first couple are standard, right? I want to give them a place in dev. And with a couple of the states, we talked about citizen development. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But usually you're going to want to make that available. So you want to describe that what you offer is IT to help people provide case management to their citizens. And then after that, we're going to have certain guided ways to do that. And then we want to automatically let a person land in dev without having to figure out a lot of stuff in the beginning like they usually do. And then from there, we'll talk a little bit about the next stages and how we can even go as far as chargeback as part of this process. All right, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this Fish and Wildlife as the service that we're going to automate. So we're going to say that Fish and Wildlife is a first-time customer of our citizen case management as a service. And how do we accommodate them from the beginning? And so it's a little bit different in state and local government. It's not like there's 400 people that are waiting there in a customer service organization. Customer service is kind of spread out. There's a little bit in this agency and a little bit in this department under that agency. So it's all spread out where there might be desks of 5 people. There might be desks, if it's something bigger, there might be a few hundred people at that service desk. So what we want to do is we want to let people from any service desk come in and request one of these new case forms. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump in, and I am going to start talking a little bit about what we're doing. So inside of this instance, this is going to be our prod instance today for the demo of this new functionality. And so Jay Spirko, that's my demo instance. And later we're going to jump to a dev instance because we're talking about the whole life cycle. Now in this prod instance, I have my code installed, and this is that public service template that I was telling you about. Now in the public service template, there's no tables in here, but there are some forms. There's a bunch of workflows, and this is where I spent the majority of my time, is really determining these workflows. But there's also a piece in here where you can go do certain things in the setup. And what I do is I take this source code and I am pushing it into source control. So there is a GitHub repo for this, and people can go to that GitHub repo and pull everything I'm demoing today down. Everything I've done, I showed you in that PowerPoint, all those steps, it's all wrapped into this one code set. So it's a little bit more complicated than going to the ServiceNow store and just requesting something, but it's not much more complicated. So if you do go to that repo, the public service template repo, it'll give you instructions here on how you can either test this in a dev instance or put it in your own instance. So I walk you through how to go to GitHub. I walk you through how to get all the pieces. And then each of the configurations that I showed you in the PowerPoint, they're documented here. And there's also a video on all of them. So I have a playlist that goes through these videos step by step. So what I did is this is the last one last year that I documented, which is the part where I went through Flow Designer, and I'll have a new one in here that's going to explain what I'm showing you today. So what I'm showing you today is the first time I'm showing it to anybody. So I want to give you an idea of what that looks like. And when you download the template, you'll get this catalog called pub. And that catalog will be automatically enabled once you install that template, right? So if you go here, you download the code, you follow the instructions, you're going to have a new catalog called pub. Now in pub, there's going to be just a couple of example services, and you can change these if you want. So I have public works, services, and then it's all going to be just a 2-level directory structure. So under services, if I go to non-emergency, you'll see I have report streetlight out. And then and what we're going to do is we're going to build a new basically a new taxonomy record here today underneath services. So what I usually do, or what we do in prod, is this is how we want to offer it, right? So I am a state government in this case, and I'm an IT organization, and I want to be able to offer these services to my agencies. So if I go to agency, and I say, okay, here's the one service, create a citizen case for my department. So I know that this is my existing portal. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and see what we want to do. So we want to create a case for the citizen. And again, we're in prod right now, so I don't want to create that case in prod because it needs to go back into development before I can promote it to prod. So what is it that the citizen will actually see? Right? And now in the beginning, we talked about that they're going to go into, we're going to create a report illegal hunting service. Right? So this is a form that we're going to create for report illegal hunting. Now, what is our top level category going to be? Well, I'm going to put that in the services category. Again, in my portal, I'm going to put it in the services category. And then what subcategory do you want to put this under? Well, in services today, there's non-emergency issues, or I can choose to create a new subcategory. I need to name this subcategory. So what I want to do underneath services is I want to call this fish and wildlife. And do I want to add a map to this? So if I'm reporting illegal hunting, do I need a map? Well, yeah, that's probably a good idea to let the people tell me where they're going to report the illegal hunting. So I'm going to add a map to that component. And then who are the people that are going to be receiving these cases when they come in? So if I know the group right now, I can go ahead and select the group. I'll just say Alabama Dispatchers is that group. Now I know enough now to create a catalog with some standard features in it to put a map on that item, and then go ahead and I can request that now. Now, if I'm from the Fish and Wildlife Department, what I would usually have to do is call IT to figure out who in IT is going to be able to create this new case for me, or do I have to call in a partner, or I have to do all these other things. But what we're doing is once this comes into prod, right, we're now kicking off a workflow, and this is the new workflow. So this process new citizen case request, that's the new workflow that I built in the studio. So you'll see that down here, process new citizen case request. So when I push this on the GitHub repo, this functionality will automatically be on your instance if you download it. Okay, so what happens in Flow Designer, I'm not going to go through this because it's about 30 steps, but what's going to happen as that catalog item comes in, I'm going to go ahead and grab the catalog items variables off it. So I'm going to know, do they want to add a map? I'm going to know what the new category, all those variables. And then what I could do is I could start saying, is there a category that exists for that already? If there is a category, I'm going to look it up in the remote system. So I'm going to look this up in development, because now I don't care what's in prod, because I'm not building this in prod. I'm building this in development. So what I'm able to do here is I'm able to use a ServiceNow feature that lets us do remote record lookups or do a remote record creation. So what I'm doing is I'm actually building this model in development so that the person in Fish and Wildlife has a starting point. They don't have to go back to the beginning. They don't have to call a developer. They'll automatically, once this goes through, it's going to automatically create it for them. So I'm not going to go, like I said, into a lot of detail, but what it does as it works through, in the end, what it's going to do, it's going to send an email to that person, to that developer in Fish and Wildlife that asked for that new form to be created. And we're going to take a look at that email. So what happened in this case is I'm going to look at the execution of the form we just submitted. But this is the one we just submitted at 3:19. And what this did is it went through, and you can see that the catalog item kicked it off. It said, okay, do I need to create a new subcategory? And it says, yes, that was marked true. So it evaluated the true. Then it looked it up in the remote system. Did it find that record? No. Well, it built a new record. So it built a new category and a new service, because you remember those workflows are building both sides of the equation, your service structure as well as your directory structure in your catalog. And then what it's going to do is after it's going to create that, it's going to look up the record. So this is the actual item in the catalog. It's going to create the record if it doesn't find it. And then at the end, it's going to take all that together and it's going to send an email to the person that requested this. Right, so it sent this email, and I'm going to show you that email in a minute. It should have landed in my inbox. So at 3:19, it sent an email to me because I asked that somebody create that form for me. Okay, so now if I go back to my email, and I want to take a look at that. If I go back to my, let me just hide it so I don't show you guys all my email. All right, so if I go back to my email, this is my, from 320, I got this instructions to finalize report illegal hunting. Right, so this is my request that went in, just the normal requests from a catalog, nothing big here. But then what I did is when I requested this item, I created all these things for you, but it's in dev, right? You requested it from prod, which is this one, but I built all the records in dev. So what it wants the developer to do now is it wants the developer to go ahead and click here, and it's going to say, you can look at how this item looks right now. Like, how does this case form look today? Well, if I click on that, it's going to load that case form for me. Again, not in production, right? But it's going to take me over to development, which is this digital service workgroup instance. And what it did is it created a report illegal hunting form for me, and I could describe my issue, right? Describe my issue, tell me where illegal hunting happened. And so it's really easy now. If this works perfect, right, I should be able to go back into my email, and when I'm all ready to go, I should be able to go ahead and promote this. Click on a promote button, and it would automatically promote it to say, hey, developers, this update set is ready to move into staging. And so whatever that case may be, whether it's a change or it's going to be an enhancement request or maybe even a demand to move that in, then it could be done. Now, if it's more complicated than that, right, which forms usually are, it's not just going to be that report illegal hunting, but there's going to be more to it. So in the email, if you're a developer, this is where citizen developer comes in, right? And you're only going to make that catalog item available to people that know the citizen developer process at least a little bit. And so if you're not ready to drop that form in and to say to promote it, what you can do is you can click on this button, and it's going to bring you to a place where you can make modifications to that form. Right, so I know what the citizen's seeing today, and now what I can do is I can go to report illegal hunting, and this will check it out for me and let me edit that if I want to. Right, so I can edit this catalog item again in a citizen developer area. This isn't meant to say that we need a developer to do these things. So if I want to in here, I can go ahead and attach a file. I can put a picture in there. I can go down into the questions, and where I just have my map and my variables, I could insert a new question, and I could say, I could just say it's going to be text. And I'll just put one in there real quick. Single line text. Let's put another question. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and insert that question. And then at the end, when you're done making these changes, and I don't know if everybody has seen this already, right? But this is the new catalog builder. But once it's all done, what you're going to do is you're basically going to check that back in. So what it's going to do is when I go to review and submit here, it's going to take this copy that I'm editing right now, and it's going to make it the primary copy. So once I hit submit, it's checking those changes back in. Now, as the developer, again, the citizen developer, I can come back here and I can refresh what the citizen's seeing inside the portal, and I can go ahead and does switch it. So you got to go back. So if I go back in my services structure now have a directory called Fish and Wildlife in dev, and now I can report illegal hunting, and I should have that new item on my form that the citizen developer created. Right, so now I have this ask field in here, as well as the describe field. And one other piece I have is if I do want to go into a new browser, and because I'm logged in here already, I already clicked on it. So if I open a new browser that's not logged in, and I paste that, you'll see that what it does, it's going to give me the public version of this form. So on the public version of this form, what a user would see, because most of the time, I usually don't have to do that. Most of the time in governments, you're not going to want to make people log in. So what you're going to be able to do, that should have went right there for me. I think I missed a step here. Almost a perfect demo. So what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to come in here sort of like this form. If I report streetlight out, if I go in there as a non-logged in user, what it'll do is it'll ask me for my email and my last name, first name. Now what this lets you do is the workflow. What it'll do is it's going to create a consumer record in customer service management. So even though this person isn't logging in, we are creating a record of their name and their email address. So it's not unlike what it would be like if you let people email you to get service. We're just keeping all those emails together so we can see this person with this email address or this name has submitted a request in our portal before, but they're not logging in, right? They're not actually, they came in as a public guest, but we do have some kind of user record to attach to those requests. Okay, so that's basically the parts that we automated, right? Where somebody come in and now they're all set in dev to go. They have a template created. They actually have a live thing in the portal in the directory structure they requested. Now I want to take a look at a couple other things in dev before we move on, because this is really what separates ServiceNow, I think, from a lot of the other ways that you could have built this same catalog item. So if we go back to let's go back to our dev environment. Okay, so go back to our dev environment. You'll see what that workflow did is it created a record producer. So it created a record producer that lets me report illegal hunting. It created a category, and this is again in the dev system. It did all these things. So it created a category called Fish and Wildlife. But what it did is it also created the services structure. Right, so it created this services structure. Now what this does is it builds automatic reporting for the manager of Fish and Wildlife, right? Whoever Fish and Wildlife is that's looking all the services they're providing, they're now able to come back in the service owner workspace. Now this is what we looked at last year. So these are the new views that are coming. So if you have a portfolio of public services, right, I'm able to come in underneath services and I'm able to see, okay, what's in there? Well, I have the emergency services that had that report a pothole in there, but now I have Fish and Wildlife. And if I click on the Fish and Wildlife service, you can see right now that I only have, I'm gonna have to refresh this because I recreated it. You can see in there right now, I should only have one service offering right now, because the only thing I'm offering in Fish and Wildlife is I'm offering you the ability to create report illegal hunting. So underneath Fish and Wildlife, should be able to bring up that bit. There we go. I could see report illegal hunting is the one that was just created. And then what we're doing here is bringing up a score. So over time, you'll be able to see how many people accessed one of these offerings and report illegal hunting. After somebody reports illegal hunting, they'll automatically get sent a survey. So every 50th user, I think by default, will send a survey and say, can you rate this service from a 1 to a 10? Did you get what you expected? So we'll automatically be able to use the survey capability to bring up a score here. Now, over time, you'll be able to see Fish and Wildlife. Well, what if I want to submit another request? And what if I want to have a workflow for Fish and Wildlife so I can automate some of these report illegal hunting process? Right, so what you'll be able to see here in the version that's coming out next month, I'll be able to see all of the stuff at the different life cycle stages. So Fish and Wildlife, I can see what's being developed right now and promoted. What are the relationships to other service? Are there any improvement initiatives? And so what you get at the Fish and Wildlife level is all of those different work streams, whether they're operational, right? You'll see operational work streams like the ones coming in now, how many people are using it. If you have SLAs on it, it'll bring the SLAs up. If there's any outages on Fish and Wildlife, it'll show you those outages. And so this is what the business side gets in return. They get these out-of-the-box reports that aren't very impressive right now, but once data starts coming in, they will be. And then you can drill down into these individual offerings and see the same metrics, but at those offering levels. Like how many subscribers are in here, right? Or what's the performance score on this? what are the catalog items that are contributing to report illegal hunting, right? So it'll show you the catalog items that are clicking up that score. All right, so I can see usage, adoption, I can see if people like it or not. All of that would be available in the dashboards, along with any incidents that you're logging against those services, or any changes, right? So it'll show you the changes that are coming here that are unplanned changes, because we don't want to show the business every single change that we're doing on report illegal hunting because we're building a workflow. We just want to show them the ones that are unplanned changes, kind of emergency things that happened, or we want to show them on incidents, anything that's a critical incident, like a P1. We want to elevate that so that they're getting messages about that. Okay, now last year in the last meeting we talked about these new views that will be available to everybody. So whether you have ITSM Professional or ITSM Standard, you're going to get these views. And what I'm showing you is the current version, right? We're looking at this overview in production, but you'll also get, instead of production, you'll get a planning view, which shows you the demands and the enhancement requests against illegal hunting. But you'll also be able to see the build stage. So plan, build, and run. You'll have three different views on every single service that you build. So if this developer, this one who said, hey, I'm just going to stand a form up and get it to production, but later that developer wants to go ahead and promote this, in our workflow, we could actually say, okay, click here to submit an enhancement request against this service right now. And then you bring your developers in. Then you bring in the people that are going to say, okay, this is the custom workflow we're doing for illegal hunting. These are the new fields that we're going to collapse and hide, or it's more complex form. Right, so this is the form that we just built with that citizen developer. It's like the string across the river, right? That you're going to build this really awesome process out. And that string across the river is just the start. So I've digitized report illegal hunting. Now what am I going to do? Now what am I going to do to automate it and take it to the next level? So underneath here, you'll see what I'm adding to my workflow, right, is all those stages. So in subsequent demos, we'll be able to go ahead and say, how do we do those next steps? And some of the things that they're asking me for now is, because that other department came in, and let me just open this up again. That other department came in, right? So it was Fish and Wildlife that requested this service. How do I now, once I develop it and I click on that promote button, whether it's an enhancement request or a demand that's sent over to the team that promotes it to staging and then to prod, how do I go ahead and do that, right, is my next step. But then also, how do we say, create more of a consumption model here, right? So Fish and Wildlife has never used ServiceNow before, but now they have a form that their citizens are using. Some of the organizations, this is going to be an optional step, but it is in the model, right, to where you can start charging for that service. Because we don't only have the catalog item, we also have that service structure. So our choice is there. We could charge back. Because you gave me the group of people, I could say there's 10 people in that assignment group. So I'm going to charge you back for 10 people a month, and there's an ongoing charge for IT to charge that organization back. And again, this part I mentioned here, whether you're running Agile or Waterfall, this is where you'd be able to click, because you have the structure now for report illegal hunting. So I can click and submit an enhancement request against that, or start a project against illegal hunting. All those iterations that can all be built into that flow so that the developer has everything in one email. Whether I need to go and submit an enhancement request, I need to go and see how much we're getting charged, right? All of that can be done as part of that same workflow that helps you promote it to development, and then to test, and then into prod. So that's the process that I've been working on. And like I said, I will move this into this automate process workflow. It is in right now. So if you did fork the repo right now on GitHub, you would get the most recent version because I did commit this last night. But it's not complete yet. I don't have all the instructions in there and everything yet. But that is the next phase that I'm working on. So you'll see if you go into the JSpearCode demo, which is the one that I was just demoing off of, You'll see there was a drop yesterday, 18 hours ago. So I am dropping that. But once this is all done, and once I have that stage done, where I can go ahead and request it as a agency citizen developer, I can put that request in and then have that whole workflow I just showed you work. Then I'll move it to the master branch. So it's not in the master branch yet, but the master branch does have everything I showed you up until that point. And I will have the instructions in the README as well. So that those instructions here where it says process case in public portal, there'll be a new one that will have citizen case request to fulfill stage. And it'll have a little breakout here, and you'll be able to pop that open, and you can see that, it'll be complete status, and you'll be able to watch the video on it, which will be sort of like what I showed you today, but shortened. And then just what's coming next. So those new things that I told you about, right, that we want to do a chargeback model in there, and we also want to create an enhancement queue against the service that we built. Those will be in the coming soon section. All right, so whoever wants to come off mute, if there are any questions, I'll open it up for questions. If you need me to jump back to anything or show you any of that, happy to do that. If not, I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. Okay. All right, so maybe somebody, if somebody wants to chime up, the part that I'm wondering about a little bit. Okay, let's imagine that that use case we just did, fish and wildlife. I created that form in dev, right? So now we could submit a case in dev, and it's sitting in development. And let's say that right now the citizen developer that's in Fish and Wildlife is ready to promote it. He's happy with the form the way it is, and is ready to move that into production. What does that request become? Does it become a standard change? Does it become a demand body of work for the IT team? Or does it become an enhancement against an agile project? So anybody that's doing this today that's in IT, like the shared IT agency or the central IT agency, would you have a read on that? Like, do you have something in your mind that says, this is how I would do it?
Well, for me, I would look at some of that. Like if you're creating a brand new one, it wouldn't be necessarily an enhancement, right? Unless you're looking at modifying an existing object, right? Mm-hmm. So it'd be more of that change or demand piece, but I guess, I don't know. Well, it's tough because, it may fall into needing to be added to kind of the agile board of things, but.
Yeah. Yep, because that's what I was thinking too, is we might be able to do two. Like if I created, let's say I use this model that I had here, and I created Fish and Wildlife. So let's say this is my digital product. But then if I add another one, like report illegal fishing, I'll get real creative. But I'm adding one to the existing Fish and Wildlife digital product. I'm now adding report illegal fishing. So maybe that is a change request. But because I built the product here, maybe that is a demand because it's, you know what I mean? Like it's a bigger set of work to add a whole directory structure or a whole service instead of just an offering on an existing service. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And then I guess too, it's going to be a matter of, are we working in an agile, right? Agile is an enhancement against the product. And in 4.0, in CSTM 4.0, you can have these services can actually be digital products. So you can put a model on Fish and Wildlife. You can say model 1.0 includes report illegal hunting, but model 2.0 says report illegal fishing. And then I release that all as one. So we kind of add up the domains until a release, or add up the enhancements and staging until a release. And then we promote the whole Fish and Wildlife as a product release. So that could be another another way to go about it.
Yeah. At Argonne right now, we catalog items require a standard change request.
Standard change, okay, that helps.
But your concept of building out the whole sort of service environment initially, that it kind of falls under demand to me. But then right now in our organization, that would mean you'd have to have a small project around it before you did it. But you've actually coded that whole part of it. So I don't, I guess if the demand got approved, you could just automate the whole creation of it. But even standing up a service, you still have to have a change request tied to it, I would think. If you're gonna add something new to your catalog and onboard service owners and stuff, you might want to make sure that change is involved with that, just to make sure the right people are notified and informed.
Yeah, because that's a big part of the work now too, because I did this and it's just it's an open service form, right? Because we created that fish and wildlife. You still have to come in and do all that other work to actually give that thing some teeth.
Right.
Like I need to come into the offering report illegal hunting, and I need to say, okay, who's the support group for this? I could have automated that because I did let you put the support group on the bottom. So I could automate that from the form, because they'll say, okay, this is the support group. But then we still have the other things like you mentioned before, like who are the owners on this and who are all the other people, right, that are supporting this service.
Right. Well, and sometimes when we build out new offerings like this, we have to train the support group on how to manage the ticket when they get it.
Yeah.
Right. Or you get I put this into the service portal and then it's a black hole and nobody actually delivered what I asked for. So.
Yeah. So the other nice part about having this service structure, besides having that team, is you have all the permissions. So instead of doing permissions on an assignment group, you just say, hey, only people that are in that fish and wildlife can see that fish and wildlife service. Right. So all that structure is defined underneath in terms of what lands in you can only go into your agent workspace. You can only see fish and wildlife because that's the group you're in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's very nice. Very cool.
Cool. All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions on this? All right. Now, what I want to talk about a little bit too, because I'm working with a couple other counties, and just take this report illegal hunting use case and turn it into password reset. Right. So I'm in a county and they have a sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department has these certain things for keeping the armory. And they have people call them for password resets because they control the armory application. Now, if you're IT, how do you not do password resets for the armory, but offer them a service where you can broker password reset to them? And what do you give them? Well, you give them the form, you give them the intake, you give them the agent workspace to take in the requests, and you give them the process for resetting passwords in the armory application. Right, so we can centrally manage all that, just like you would do password reset for anything else, or incident management or change management. Right, so structuring all the services like that so that we have a model underneath them all, and we're not the one that's actually doing the password reset. So you're providing the service of password reset to another agency so that they can do password resets on their own. Right, very similar to we just did illegal hunting or asset management. Right, so I'm not going to be the asset manager in IT. I'm not going to take all those responsibilities on for your audits and keeping stuff up to date. But I'm going to be able to discover your assets for you. So what is that service that I'm offering you to be able to manage your own assets? And that's the type of thing that I'm hoping that we just cross that bridge a little bit here, is these repeatable offerings of where you're offering that dichotomy, right? You're a broker of that service. You're not the deliverer of that service. You're brokering that service to somebody else. It's just like hardware. Like if you're an organization and you say, okay, I provide laptops, it's like, you don't just hand somebody a Dell laptop and say, here you go, right? You're going to put your standard image on it. You're going to make sure all the security's in place. So it's that whole wrapper around those things. And this is more just, case management is a little bit extended, but it's very similar to how we're already doing hardware and software. And so I'm hoping that these things in the value stream that I just showed you for how to deliver a case to an agency, I'm hoping we can do it the same way for all the things that central IT provides. So case as a service is just one example that I wanted to make sure I got away from an IT use case because a lot of people get caught up between, are we actually delivering the incident management or are we just giving that to somebody else so that their fulfillers can manage incidents? So that's the concept for today. All right. I have one other piece and then I'm rushing to the airport. So if anybody doesn't have any questions on this, I'll close out on this for today. Okay. And this will get us ready too for those 4.0 discussions. That's part of the reason I wanted to do this. And I wanted to talk about that early SDLC stage, right? So that we understand how the model impacts those things that aren't all production, right? Since 2018, we started the group, we're looking at all production use cases, all assuming that these services are already in operations. But now we're going back and really rethinking that process of how we structure the service to share it with others. Right, now this year we're looking at reshaping the group a little bit or kind of up-leveling the group. And in order to do that, what I did is I started to classify some content. And the content that we look at is, we have a lot of content down here today. So if you look at it on a scale where the top is business focused, it's focused on the accomplishments, the capabilities the organization needs to run, to down here where it's very focused on the technology, the underlying technology. And then going on this axis, right, we go from very tactical, it's focused on a single thing, versus more strategic, where it's broadly focused. You can see different people. This is just me kind of spitballing at, what people that we would actually be talking to in the process of delivering digital services, depending on how the content is, right? So if we're very business focused and strategic, it's more around the C-suite. Where if we're more tactical and technology focused, it's focused more on our people that are on the service desk team or on the operations teams. So what I did is I looked at our content last year, and these are all the recordings that I give to everybody. So we had one on digital service financials, which was a little bit more business focused because it was on the dollars and cents of operating digital services, but it was still focused on more of a single person. It was focused on that finance person. We did some financial modeling, and we did some things on a framework for digital service delivery, which just focused on, we have this group of services. How do we improve the experience? How do we make it faster? Or how do we get better measurements on how we're delivering that service? So it was very focused on 3 core attributes of the service that the business was interested in. But as you can see, a lot of our content was down here. So as we look this year, I'm going to be able to broaden this, and we're looking to our group to do this a lot more, because in the enterprise architecture group, we have a lot of people that are focused on really big companies in different industries, and we can bring in some different perspectives. Like here, how are we looking at these portfolios and how is each department consuming those? Like very specifically, how would an HR manager want to come in and look at all the HR services they have and all, how are the ERPs that they're using to deliver these service performing? If we go up into this one, it would be more about how is the C-level setting strategies on digital services, right? Which takes us into the digital transformation area. And what are their big focuses and how are we supporting that with all this structural work that we're doing? And then more as you go in, and here it's more of like the architects and the CTOs, more about these portfolios of technology. How are you really taking a list of all your technology that you bought and ensuring that you're making the most out of that technology, right? And that's really where that organization, are we buying the right stuff to deliver those services that we need? Or are we retiring the right stuff? That's probably the biggest question in most orgs that I deal with. Are we killing the right stuff over here and replacing it with modern stuff, right? So a lot of the C-level people that I talk to, that's their big challenge, is how do we get rid of that technical debt and those 40-year-old applications or 30-year-old applications that we have sitting out there. So part of the part that I'll be talking to you about, and we weren't ready to come out with it this time, but I'm talking to my manager who's new. He's only 3 weeks in, and I'll be working with him, and then also the enterprise architect manager, who have tentatively agreed to sponsor the group, right? So we'll be able to get more input from more people. Instead of me delivering the content, we'll get a lot smarter people on, and people that worked in both larger and smaller organizations, right? So we'll have a broader group of content coming in. But we also want to broaden this up to help people that are customers. Like, I see more people now, like, all right, John, I figured this CSTN thing out, and they're all dressed up with no place to go, right? They know how to build service and how to structure services, but their CTO or their CIO still doesn't understand the value that it brings. Well, I can do financial reporting on it. Well, they don't really know that, right? So a lot of these things that we have to arm you with, right, to be able to structure these portfolios is communication up. I think we focused a lot on all the communication down. How do we get that technology and group it together and start packing services into our catalog? But now, how do we actually use it to run the business? So pushing out into these other areas and broadening that content is going to be a big focus of this year. All of my technical demos, like today was pretty technical. It'd probably land down here, but we want to definitely open that up to some of these broader topics in digital transformation and how the digital services support that, instead of just, how do we build models around them? Because eventually you have to move on from the models into value realization, or we're not going to be able to do them, right? So hopefully what we've done today, and then talking about some of the automation, how do we blend AI into that? That's going to be a really cool topic when we get there. Those are the things that we really need to be forward-looking with in order to make sure that we're getting the value out of the models that we're building. So I think stretching it out like this will help everybody realize the value instead of just our core group that we've been working with. All right, anybody have any feedback on that or takeaways? Hopefully, if you're not okay or you have concerns, drop me an email. We can talk it through. If you're ready to present, I definitely want to mix in people that are doing this instead of all this stuff that I have, which I said is more theoretical because I'm not one of you guys that's actually delivering these services. Let me know and I'll get you on the agenda. I think we had Kaiser and Kaiser that was ready to speak, and there was one other one too. So if you're ready to come on and share what you're doing or share where you're getting stuck, just drop me an email and let me know. All right. Last comments? I know it was a lot of me talking today, not as collaborative. With that out, I will close it a little bit early. And thank you everybody for attending. Appreciate it.